Well, now, have you ever asked yourself, in case something happens and you don't get money from that place that you usually get, what do you think would happen? Have you ever asked a question and be like, okay, fine, well, I'm employed somewhere. What if today I get fired, or maybe say retrenched, as they call it? Okay, but now the question is this: how can I be able to feed my family if you're married? How can I be able to pay my bills and all those kind of things? And by the way, this is not only applicable for those who are married. Anybody can actually face such kind of things. Now, have you ever asked yourself, what exactly would you do in case such a thing happens? And today I'm going to show you exactly what exactly are you supposed to do before such an eventuality. And by the way, we don't pray for such an eventuality, God forbid it to happen, but anyway, we have to plan ourselves. Today I'm going to show you exactly how to create what we call the emergency fund, step by step, without doing what? Correct, without struggling. All right. And by the way, if you're watching me for the first time, my name is Joseph. Talk about money investment anytime, and I do upload a video each and every day on YouTube. And if you don't want to miss all my good videos, make sure that you subscribe to this channel, make sure that you like the video and comment down below. Let's get into the business. Now, here we are. First of all, let's define what's an emergency fund. What is it? What does it compose? Okay, because, well, we cannot be able to engage on something that we want to create and we do not know what, we don't know exactly what it paid. So what is an emergency fund? And people tend to confuse two things. There is something called emergency fund, and there is something called a sinking fund. Sinking fund. All right, those are two different things. So let's start defining. So I'll make a whole video explaining the difference between emergency fund and a sinking fund, but just let me shed a little bit of light. Emergency fund, that money that you set aside just in case something happens that you did not anticipate. That's for the term emergency. You cannot anticipate an emergency to happen. So that is money that you set aside for that purpose. Sinking fund, that money that you set aside because you anticipate a certain thing will happen. For example, say you have a pregnant wife right now and you know after 9 months she will give birth. Therefore, there are some expenses that will come with that. So, or maybe let's say in a year's time you'll have a kid that is going to school. Therefore, you're anticipating for that. Now, if you set aside the money, that is not an emergency fund. That is a sinking fund. And don't confuse. Some people do save some money aside and say, hey, guess what? I have my emergency fund. No, there's a difference between, see, like when we say savings, savings, it's like an umbrella. We can house variety of things inside here. We can have an emergency fund here. We can have a sinking fund here. You know, we can have whatever. See, like, you cannot say because I'm saving a certain amount of money, that's now is my emergency fund. No. One rule of an emergency fund, it has to be in liquid. It has to be in liquid. And first, if you don't know what exactly the term liquid means, when I say the emergency fund should be in liquid, it simply means that that emergency fund that you have, it should be in cash. And you're not putting that money aside for the purposes of investment. Number two, that emergency fund should be, or that money should be easily accessible. Okay, do not take your money and put it in shares and you buy your shares and do it in treasury bills and bonds. Then you're telling me that is your emergency fund. No, that is not your emergency fund, because it cannot be accessed within a snap of a finger. All right, so what you do with an emergency fund, it's a money that you set aside in liquid that you can get like right now, immediately, in case I think something happens out there. Okay, now how do we create? Now that we have understand what is an emergency fund, now how do we realize it? How do we create it? How do we come up with? Okay, let's go step by step and do exactly that. And did you subscribe? Did you hit that like button? All right, did you as well comment down below? If you're doing so, thank you very much. Now, how do we create an emergency fund? What you're supposed to understand that my emergency fund is different from your emergency fund. Emergency fund in terms of the amount differs from one person to the other. Now, this is what happens if you would like to know how to create an emergency fund. First, ask yourself, how much do you make or how much do you earn? Whether you are in business or whether you are employed, how much do you earn? And I'm going to use an example here. For example, say you earn 45,000 a month. 45,000 a month. That's the money you earn. All right. Use any amount of money that you earn there. Even if you make $1 million bob or 10,000, use that what you have. Just borrow the concept. Let's say you make 45,000. Okay. Now this 45,000 that you make, there is something called the recurrent expenditure. Recurrent expenditure. What are the recurrent expenditure? Recurrent expenditure simply means those things that you cannot shake them off. Each and every month you must use them. For example, you have your rent out there. You have your rent, you have your water, you have your electricity, you have your transport, you have your like black tax in Africa. It's a quite of a serious thing. And then maybe say you have something to do with entertainment, you have things to do with like clothing, you have entertainment, all those kind of things. Things that you must be able or you must do each and every month. Those repetitive things, paying the school fees and all those kind of things. So now those are called the current expenditure. Most of the time we usually save or we usually set aside the emergency fund on the purposes of catering the recurrent expenditure. Now, the question is this. Now, this is your 45,000. That is the amount of money that you make per month. And now this 45,000, let's say your recurrent expenditure out of this, it's around 30,000, all right? Let's say it's 30,000. So if it is 30,000, that is your recurrent expenditure, then it means you're remaining with 15K. Now, out of this 15K, remember one thing, differentiate between that savings on the purposes of investment and a emergency fund. So if you have 15,000 and that is what you have, that's what you want to develop yourself from. This is what we say, hey, this is your saving, potential savable amount. Then you can decide, hey, guess what? 10,000 out of this amount of money, I can set aside for the purposes of what? Savings. And these savings is for the purposes of doing what? Of investing in future. Because, hey, guess what? At the end of the day, we don't save. What we do, we save on the purpose of doing what? Raising the capital to invest. Okay? Now, out of the 15,000, you can decide the 10,000 goes towards the savings and investments. That is the money that you can put it aside, then you don't have to access it easily. Now, the emergency fund, again, you can actually decide to do what? To put aside 5,000 each and every month. Some people don't even put like a huge amount of money. Some people can decide, hey, I don't want to put a huge amount of money. Let me just be putting aside 2,000 only, just 2,000 in your emergency fund. It is still okay. And then the 3,000, you can channel it towards other savings, whereby you can increase the basket of savings to 13,000 or something of sort. But the point is this, what is the guiding principle? How much is enough emergency fund? Because some people ask, okay, fine, now I understand what is an emergency fund, but how much should I have and how much is enough and all those kind of things. Now, what you do for you to understand how much is your enough emergency fund, this is what you do. Now, remember what I asked you? How much is your recurrent expenditure? And we are using this mathematics, and you told me your recurrent expenditure is 30,000. All right. So the point is this, you're supposed to raise amount of money that is equivalent to catering the 3 months emergency fund. 3 months emergency fund. What does it mean? If a single month you survive on 30,000, therefore you need 30,000 multiplied by 3 for you to cater the what? The at least 3 months emergency fund. Therefore it means you need 30,000 multiplied by 3, that is 90,000. All right? 90,000. So whenever you have an emergency fund that is equivalent for 3 months, that's okay. Why 3 months? You see what? Within 91 days or 90 days or so, it's actually a time allowance that you're giving yourself. Just in case something happens today, I have 90 days to figure out what I can be able to, sort of restructure myself and get on board and get on feet or something of sort, so that at least I can reorganize myself so I don't face such kind of a thing again. But what if you get fired today, you have nothing, probably you have like 20,000. That's not even enough to cater for your single month expenditure. But if you have like 90,000 with you set aside, and remember one thing, this money it is not for investments, but you can put this emergency fund in a money market fund, for example, because in a money market fund gives you that you retain what we call the liquidity. You still have the liquidity in the sense that you can be able to withdraw your money from an MMF at any given point. Because what I'm avoiding is taking this money and putting it in a bank account, again, where it's just lying idle. And but just get this principle at the back of your head. We are not investing this money, and do not put that money on a money market fund on the basis of investing it. It's only that we don't want to idolize this money, meaning we don't want to put it idle somewhere where it is eaten away by the inflation. So what you do, you put this money into a what? And an MMF. So you continuously put this money into an MMF. And for example, if you put this money to an MMF, it's obviously gaining some interest out of it. And again, you can be able to access this money within a click of a button. And an MMF, you can be able to withdraw your money. If you want to withdraw your money partially, you can do so in a days or 2 days, or maybe if you want to withdraw all your money, you can get your cash maybe say in 3 days at most. Okay, still that one can be able to cater for your expenses. Now this is what you do. Now see, you've realized now you need at least 90 days. See, we say emergency fund should be 3 months all the way to 6 months. Some people tell you, hey, it doesn't harm if it can go up to 12 months or simply 1 year. There is no problem. But if you have an emergency fund that exceeds 1 year, that is now graduating to be an idle cash. You should actually focus on investing that money, because hey, I don't think you'll be seated somewhere figuring out what you should do with your life with a whole year. Come on, that's now money that is idling somewhere. That's why I've said If you realize that your emergency fund is exceeding 6 months, put that money into an MMF, at least where it is earning you something. Now, the point is this now. Oh, okay, now after realizing you at least need 90,000, and remember, we are setting aside 5,000 each and every month as your emergency fund. Therefore, it means you need 90,000 divided by 5,000. Simply what I'm doing right now, I'm actually calculating the long I need to actually realize this amount of money. All right, you go by 3, by 3, by that. How many times is it? Is it 16 or something? 16 multiplied by 5, I think it's 90, if I'm not wrong. Is it? No, not 90 or something. It's like, that is 33, 80, whatever, 10. It's like sort of a 17 months or something or so. Let's call it 17 months, okay? 17 months, you divide this by 12. This is like 1 year and some 5 months or something of so. So you need 1 year and 5 months to actually realize a basket of at least safeguarding your 3 months. So you've seen how long it can take. You know why we actually we're sort of like stretching it out there? Because the primary thing that you're supposed to do with your cash is to focus it towards an investment. Okay, and that's why you have to put a huge chunk of money towards an investment, because the investment is making you some cash, and also businesses is making you some cash. And the emergency fund, again, we want to put this money in liquid form. Therefore, that's why we kind of sort of press it or something of sort. So it's good to understand how much do you exceed, or how much do you actually set aside, or how much do you use in terms of a recurrent expenditure. Number two, you understand, hey, we need at least 3 months safeguarding our emergency fund, or safeguarding ourselves within a period of 3 months, so that at least we can give ourselves an allowance. You see, for example, if you have a family, I know you may understand what exactly I'm talking about. You see, can you imagine getting fired, and then maybe let's say you discontinued from your job, and then you're not getting any cash, and you have a family to cater, you have to pay the school fees, you have to pay the bills and all those kind of things, and you do not have any money that you can be able to do that. That does not only put your family at risk, but also destabilizes your mind. You cannot even think in a rightful way, and then you're gonna get yourself sort of overstretching and doing some things here and there. So it is good to always understand, hey, guess what, out of my 45 G's that I'm having, I have to make sure that I set aside at least 5,000 or 2,000 or 3,000, whatever the thing is comfortable with you. But the point is this: save that is equivalent for at least 3 to 6 months. And if you're able to do so and it exceeds 6 months, at that particular point, focus on channeling that money towards an investment. And again, as much as it's an emergency fund, how about you put it in an MMF, whereby it's earning you something, rather than idolizing that money somewhere where it's making you zero. And by the way, not just making you zero, but it's also being eaten away by the inflation. So once you understand these nitty-gritties, then you'll be able to understand what's an emergency fund, how do I do it. And by the way, guess what, that marks the end of my video. I hope you've gotten something out of it, and all the steps on what you're supposed to do about it. And I've said, see, when you're setting aside the emergency fund, don't overstretch yourself. Don't kill the basket of investment in the purposes of sacrifice. Don't sacrifice the basket of investment in the name of achieving the emergency fund. Both of them are okay. It is good to make sure that you feed those two baskets concurrently, because they are part and parcel of your life. And that marks the end of my video. But don't forget, hit that like button. And if you'd like to have a conversation with me, don't forget that my number is always on the description of this specific video. Grab that number, shoot me a call, let's have a discussion at a personal level, so that at least we may be able to grow each other. Never forget that just like an iron sharpens another iron, so do we learn from each other. See ya.